Novelist Angela Carter once said, "Nothing is a matter of life and death except life and death." With this theme of life and death in mind, our group decided to analyze the relationship between the total number of children per woman, also known as the fertility rate, and life expectancy. According to Gapminder, the total fertility rate is defined as the number of children that would be born to each woman within prevailing age-specific fertility rates. Age-specific refers to women between 15 and 49 years of age. Life expectancy is defined as the average number of years a newborn child would live if current mortality patterns persisted.
We first graphed life expectancy versus children per woman, and as can be seen here, a negative correlation exists. As the number of children per woman in a country decreases, life expectancy increases. While the correlation was evident, we couldn't declare a direct causation between decreased fertility rate and increased life expectancy. For instance, one cannot assert that a decreased fertility rate causes the life expectancy of a country to increase or decrease. However, if the variables are analyzed separately, the factors driving the trends can be established. Moving forward, we decided to graph each variable separately with respect to time, as seen on the graphs. Fertility rate decreases with time, while life expectancy increases with time.
Due to Gapminder's limitations, we only actively analyzed the effects of GDP per capita, urbanization, education and employment opportunities for women, infant mortality rate, as well as religious beliefs and cultural norms. Yet, the general consensus among major groups such as the United Nations Population Division and the Population Reference Bureau is that a country's fertility rate is also affected by the cost of raising and educating children, the importance of children as part of the country's workforce, average age at marriage, and availability of legal abortions.
To begin, we looked at how GDP per capita, which is generally believed to be a measure of a country's wealth and productivity, plays a role in its total fertility rate. Countries with higher GDP per capita tend to have lower fertility rates. Looking more closely at the trends of specific countries, we found that over time, the children per woman decreases rapidly and drastically for developed countries such as the United States and Canada, as opposed to underdeveloped or currently developing countries such as those in Africa. The relationship between productivity and fertility can also be seen in how the U.S. fertility rate fell during periods of economic decline, such as the Great Depression, the 1970s energy crisis, and the Great Recession of 2008.
Next, we analyzed urbanization based on the percentage of the overall population that lives in urban areas. The number of children per woman decreases as urbanization increases because people living in urban areas usually have better access to family planning services and improved health care. When analyzing individual countries, the trend becomes more clear. By 1960, the United States was already urbanized with almost 70% of its population concentrated in the metropolitans. Conversely, Tanzania and Malaysia only had 5 and 25% of their population living in urban areas respectively. Regardless of the initial or final level of urbanization, they all demonstrate a downward trend suggesting that as they become more urbanized, their fertility rate is decreasing. As previously mentioned, urban cities tend to have better standards of living, specifically healthcare opportunities, which also explains the increase in life expectancy.
We then looked at the effects of increasing education and employment opportunities for women through the increase in their labor participation rate. As more women join the workforce, their childbearing role diminishes. According to the United Nations Population Division, women are not only entering the labor force in much greater numbers, they are also remaining in the labor force throughout their childbearing and child-rearing years.
Infant mortality rates is positively correlated with a country's fertility rate. In areas with high infant mortality rates, women tend to have more children. Reductions in child mortality reduce demand for children by improving the chances of their survival into adulthood. In the other direction, reductions in fertility contribute to falls in infant mortality by enabling parents to devote more time and resources to their children. With less children, there is a higher standard of living and investment into each individual child.
Finally, the variance in religious beliefs, traditions, and cultural norms regarding the role of women in society, family size, abortion, and contraceptive use among countries can dictate the number of children per woman. For example, an interesting cultural incident is the spike in total fertility seen between 1940 and 1970 in the United States, which can be explained by the baby boomers generation. Another example is how the current social cultural norms in Tanzania show support for high fertility because, according to the United Nations Population Division, a woman's status is measured largely by her capacity to reproduce and maintain children, and the ideal number of children is still cited as 6. On the contrary, in Malaysia, due to socio-economic conditions, women tend to have less children. Malay women were least likely to feel confident that they would be able to financially support themselves, much less their children.
As you can see, the factors that influence fertility and life expectancy overlap significantly. The factors that cause life expectancy to increase are the same influences that cause women to have less children. Overall, these underlying factors offered an explanation for the negative correlation between the variables of children per woman and life expectancy in countries across the world. We now can see that life and death certainly aren't as clear-cut as Carter had suggested.